And you need to say, we need to bring people on the mic, right? We're live. We're live. Okay, let's welcome.
We got tilted a little bit.
Are you ready? Okay, we're welcoming our folks online. You guys go ahead and eat. Seriously, go ahead. Don't worry about us. We're fine. We're fine. We're gonna go ahead and get rolling, okay? John, what are you eating over there?
Salad.
Salad, okay, all right. Sounds good. I feel a little left out. That's okay, don't worry about us at all. Okay, hey, so my name's Jim Watcher. I'm here with the good Reverend Dr. Brian Valerie. Let's give it up for Brian, come on. He was an awesome advocate, as you know. Have you all heard about his book? Okay, all right. He has a book out now, on the other side, yes. So go check that out if you haven't yet. It's been very healing to me through this COVID time. So if you haven't checked that out, go check that out. So let's get into, should I introduce you? I really don't want to introduce you.
You just,
Okay.
you did. There's nothing more to say, really.
No, they're not. They're not. So we're talking about tonight, living and leading in a polarized world. Does anybody have any experience with living in a polarized world? Just a show of hands. Okay, a couple of people. Good, very good. That's great. So we are, what we're going to do is we're going to take about 40 minutes and have a discussion about this and look at some ideas and some simple tactics and approaches that we can all apply, both to our personal lives, but then also to our lives on the job. That I think would apply on the job. I haven't had work in about 2 years. So I don't know if this will apply, but Brian says.
You have worked before.
That, I don't know if you call it work, but I don't know if it fits any definition of work, but yes, I have. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to save around 15 minutes for Q&A. So both here in the room, and then also for those of you joining us on Zoom. I think we have about 2 billion people dialing in right now, crashing the service all around.
I think they're on YouTube, actually.
Oh, is it YouTube? Excuse me.
Oh, there's 4 billion.
Okay, 4 billion.
That was kind of 4 billion. It's good. That's awesome. So 4, so that's Nancy Mallory, Ray Mallory. Welcome those who are online.
Yes, thank you for joining us. And can we send a DoorDash over there, give them a salad? Yes, send us your locations and we'll get that to you. Not really, I'm just kidding. Okay, we got our warriors here lined up to defend. Listen, let's jump into this. I guess Craig covered this in prayer, right? We're good on that. Okay, so let me start just by asking you, maybe you want to talk about just kind of some of the factors that we don't think about that lead to kind of what's polarizing us right now. I mean, there's plenty of stuff going on, all the stuff. I have so many friends saying, guys, last week they said I'm off Facebook for a couple of weeks, just tuning out from there. The election was one thing. I had a talk with a friend from Texas this evening who was going on and on about how stupid it is to wear a mask.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Jim, so there are other things. People just have very different, but very strong opinions about it because these things are impacting their lives.
Yeah. I think the answer to that is everything, right? When you think about pretty much anything right now, it's polarizing. How should our kids be educated right now? I have some educators in the room. It's polarizing. They should be educated this way. They should do this way. Everything's kind of polarizing right now. I think the elections were put right into an already polarized world, which just highlighted our polarization. It already existed. It wasn't necessarily caused by an election, but the election certainly put the spotlight on a lot of different issues that polarize us, and have left us trying to figure out how do we go through life in this way. Oh my goodness, I didn't know my friend believed that. Can I still be their friend? In fact, I'm going to tell them I can't be their friend, or I'm going to tell them to choose to not be my friend if they think this way. So I think that a lot of those things already existed, and also you throw an election in there, you throw in this pandemic, this unprecedented time that maybe for some of us we thought it was going to be a couple weeks, right? And now it's going on months and months, and now we're talking years, not years, but year, hopefully. And we're going, man, this is just a perfect storm to cause fractions in our relationships and division among us, right? So you throw in things on injustice in there, things on race, which we always have difficulty talking about things of race. I did my doctorate on diversity, and so I remember when I first started that journey, it was very uncomfortable to talk about race, and I've learned in that space and grown in that space and failed in that space and succeeded in that space, but it takes energy and courage and all this, and so there's just a lot of things happening in our world right now that have caused us to really divide. And so I left, and we're talking about this tonight because our young professionals have asked us to talk about this, which tells you that you in the room and you online are saying, help us try to navigate our world right now. What does it look like to be an employee? What does it look like to be an employer? What does it look like to be a friend? What does it look like to have a relationship in this season? How do we travel through this?
Right, I overheard Nicole say she started a new job in July.
I did.
Yeah.
Last July, yeah.
So, yeah, that was July 2019.
No, 2020, so right in the midst of COVID.
Right, so so how do you get, connected with a new company, when nobody's in the office? Now, how many,
Yeah.
is anybody here going into an office? So 1, 2, just, okay, a handful of folks. All right, so maybe we start there. How do you, both as a leader, but then also kind of as a manager, just even a employee, how can you deal with some of this in the office space?
Yeah, well, let's talk about leadership. I'm assuming that you're here because you're a young adult, you're desiring to grow in leadership, and so I think the question now becomes: in a polarized world, how do you lead? How do you work? How do you be a part of an office space or whatever it might be, right? A part of a team. And I want to share kind of 6 things, okay? I'm like a list kind of person, okay? So you're just going to get a lot of lists, you're going to get a lot of numbers and things like that. But let me share just kind of 6 ways that I see. I'm a leader. I lead a church, about 3,000 people, about 50 employees. And so, I'm going through a lot of this right now too, so I'm speaking out of personal experience. I think right now as leaders, strong leadership right now desires to pull people together when the world is trying to pull them apart, right? Everything in our world is trying to pull you apart. If you even take the elections, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, I'm not going to ask you right now, and you're not going to find out what I am either. But it seems like the strategy on either side is to say, that other side sucks, right? They're trying to pull you apart. Never thought your pastor was going to say that, did you? But they're trying to pull you apart, say, this is horrible, you're horrible, that's horrible. And so good leadership in this season, I think, is about actually learning how to pull people together while the world's trying to pull them apart. And I think also strong leadership is about believing at the core of your being that actually being together and serving together and doing it in diversity and through diversity of experience and race and gifting is strength. And so, we look at our polarized world, and it might be easier to say, I'm just going to go find the people who agree with me. I'm just going to go find the people who really, really like me. I want to go find the people who do things the way that I do them. And I'm just gonna live in my world over here because it's more comfortable and it's just easier. But I think actually strength's gonna come from doing the hard thing in this moment in a polarized world and pulling people together of all different kinds. So how do we do that? I'm gonna get to my
Let's go to the
list.
list.
Okay, you wanna get to
You
the
have a
list? I got a list. Okay, the first thing I would say is this, is clarity. I think clarity brings people together. If I were to say to you, hey, come by, tomorrow and we've got a great project, it's gonna be great, just come by. You're gonna have all these questions. What are you talking about, come by? When do you want me to come by? What are we gonna be doing? What do I need to wear? What's happening here? Do I wanna be seen at this project? A lack of clarity is gonna cause more division. People aren't gonna wanna come together in that. And so that's the first thing I would say is right now is a time for you personally, as a leader, but also just in your personal life to be clear about what your vision is, about what your mission is, about what your call is. So if you're a business leader and you have employees, right now in this moment of uncertainty, it'd be really good for you to tell them and recast what your vision is. Why do you do the things that you do? When people are wondering about all sorts of things right now, let them come to a place of work where they know why they're there, why it's important for them to be there. Give them vision for the reason why they're on the team and how they're so important to the team. Give them real clarity. I think also just, for each of us, this would be a moment in time to really clarify our objectives and our priorities. I would say that, in your occupation, spiritually, physically, and we might talk about that later, but I would say for all of us right now, it'd be really good to clarify what are your priorities for this next year? Because I don't know about you, but I found early on in the COVID season, I was doing a lot of things, and my office was right next to my bed, and so I was working all the time, and I was doing all these different things, but a lot of them weren't necessarily priority. And I found myself just kind of overworking and doing things that might not matter. And I had to come to a point where I was I need real clear vision on what I'm supposed to do. And I would recommend to all of you, to even go to the person who line manages you or your managers and say, hey, these are the 5 things I think are my priority this year. Am I right on? Because as we continue through this kind of isolated world, at least then you'll know, okay, when I look back at my day, did I spend time in these 5 priorities? If not, I need to get back on track. And so clarity is really important to, pulling people together as a leader. The second thing, interrupt me whenever you want to, but don't. No, I'm just kidding. Do it whenever you want to. The second thing I would say in how to really pull people together in this polarized world is through empathy. Leadership should not be done from the ivory tower and just telling people what to do. Leadership needs to be done through empathy. And this is a moment right now where people are hurting, people are struggling, people are uncertain about their future, they might be uncertain about their jobs, all kinds of things. And this is a moment for us to, as leaders, be empathetic. Get into their shoes as best you can. Get to know the people you're working with. Get to know the people that you're employing. And it's through empathy that you're going to learn about people and their gifts, their skills, and their strengths, which will then lead you to be able to place them well and to work with them well. So empathy is a really important one right now as we try to pull people together. It's through understanding that we're going to work better together, even through, for a virtual world.
Yeah. I have found, and this probably goes into some of the other ones as well, but when I run across someone who's struggling with the same things that I'm struggling with since COVID, one, it makes me feel like I'm not alone. So when somebody will share with me and be vulnerable about, hey, listen, I'm dealing with anxiety too, right? Because I'm not overworked. I go to speak at conferences, and so that's all gone. My whole year was canceled, so and there's just been some anxiety about that for me, and I know for me it's caused a lot of procrastination and just feeling stuck. But then also, it's also helped me with my faith quite a bit, because I've had to go back and you get on my knees and pray and say, God, help me figure this out. But when I meet somebody who tells me, hey, I'm dealing with the same thing, I'm struggling with the same thing, that empathy is so powerful to me. It's really encouraging, and that helps me get back to work. Just knowing I'm not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say if you don't know how your friends and how those you work with the most closely, how they're doing right now, then you're failing at something. You need to know how your people are doing, those you're really walking with, and that's going to really help you pull people together. Let me run through a couple of these more quickly here, and then I want to get into just some kind of relationally, how do we deal with conflict? How do we deal when we actually hit polarization head on? What do we do? But a few others. I think humility is really important right now in pulling people together. In a divided world, a lot of my studies in unity and diversity had to deal with, we have to recognize our own failures, our own mistakes, where we've messed up, and confess those things and apologize for those things, so that we can open up into new relationships with others. So humility is really important in bringing people together. In America, we have this thing where we're pretty thick-headed, we're strong-headed. Do you know anybody who's strong-headed in America? Yeah, right? But we're just real strong-headed, and we hate to admit when we're wrong. And so this is going to be something, as a leader, humility is not weakness, actually. And it's been positioned as weakness, and it's not. It's not. Humility is actually, people see it as a strength in today's world. Say, wow, there's a person who knows who they are, who's willing to grow and learn and not always have to be right. And so that's gonna be a helpful tool for us. The fourth one is empowerment. If you want to pull people together, empower them, and instead of just telling people what to do or being frustrated when they're not doing what they are supposed to do, empower them. Look for ways to see them thrive. Give them great responsibility, and that really brings people into a team. You're going to see people step up and maybe even surprise you at their gifts. Two more. The fifth one is to honor. I think that good leaders are people who honor each other and honor those who work with them really well. You can see this happen even if you think through your own life when people have stopped to honor you for a job well done. I bet that impacted you probably deeply, right? And the exact opposite is really true too. And maybe you remember these things more frequently of those who dishonor you, right? I bet you remember those things really quickly. But honor is powerful. And it's like glue in a polarized world. If you really want to earn respect and if you want to bring somebody on a team, point out, the good things and the good ways God has created them and how they're being impactful, influential on the team. And so I think actually one of the Christian mandates right now should be to bring and infuse honor back into our culture. Because for too long in our culture, we've been kind of looking out for number one. And everybody's waiting for somebody else to honor them. Well, if we're all looking for that, no one's going to be honoring anybody, right? And that's kind of what's been happening. And it creates this polarized world because all we're doing now is competing against each other. Even when I've been in conversations where even when the people agree, they're competing in conversation right now. It's like so unbelievable. It's like, do you know you agree? Yes, but I have to win this conversation. You're ridiculous. You're stupid. You're ridiculous. That's not how a relationship works. Like, honor one another for who you are and how the Lord has created you. And I actually believe, and some of my study revealed, I'd like to go further than this, but I've heard story and testimony after testimony of when people say, when somebody honored me, it brought healing into my life. It's incredible. It actually has the power to heal past wounds. And maybe that's true of you. I even heard stories of people receiving physical healing when somebody stopped and honored them. That could just be with their time, that could be with their words, that could be through a ministry of prayer, whatever it might be, right? But honor is really powerful. Last one I'll say is, I think to bring people together, it takes courage, and a lot of it. It takes a lot of courage because when you're trying to bring people together, it's not going to be easy. It's like I said before, I think the easier route would be, okay, listen, I'm just going to go find a team that's just like me and agrees with everything that I think because I'm always right, and that will just be easier for you. It'll be less effective, but it might be easier. It takes a lot of courage, boldness, and strength to be a person that says, listen, I'm going to bring a team together. I'm going to be a person that works towards pulling people together rather than pulling them apart. So that's my list of 6 for now.
Look, inside of that, you mentioned dishonor,
Yes.
about how we will remember that
Yes.
more quickly. And I've realized one of my struggles here is there are times when I was dishonored in a relationship, in a personal relationship, at work too. But I'm really working, actually I'm working with Craig Horn on this a lot, on just releasing and letting go and forgiving. And I'm realizing now how much more time personally I need to invest in learning about forgiveness and letting go. Chapter 6 in your book has been very powerful for me in really digging into that and understanding just the steps you need to take to forgive somebody who's hurt you or dishonored you.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that, when I have been honored, it heals. It's a powerful, powerful healing experience.
Yeah, and that's key, right? To learn how to forgive and how to receive forgiveness too. It's absolutely key. Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about principles of navigating conflict, or you want to talk more or get into?
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I think what I heard from some of you was, man, I'm seeing fractures in my relationships. I'm seeing when certain topics come up, it's very uncomfortable in the room. How do we navigate relationships right now? So I'm seeing a few head nods, so we'll go with that topic. Is that okay? Give some help into this. Some words of advice, some counsel from the good Reverend Doctor here, okay? We'll see where we go. We'll see if any of this is noteworthy. But how do we navigate conflict?
And if you don't want to tackle this topic right now, feel free to storm out of the room. Okay?
Yeah.
And just be furious about it.
Yes, that would be good. So here are some things that we can choose in order to navigate relationships in a healthy manner. Now, listen, I'll just say this at the onset, is that, is it a song that takes 2, something like that? And it's true.
But we can't sing in here.
Isn't that the next line, actually? And it's true. Anyway, and that it is true. Even Scripture says that you should work towards peace, right? But sometimes it's not going to be achieved. Jesus even says, listen, sometimes you're going to need to shake the dust off your feet and go somewhere else, right? So sometimes as hard as we work towards peace, it's not going to be achieved. But that doesn't mean we're not to work for peace. That's what we're to do. So here's some things that I think we need to choose in order to navigate conflict, navigate healthy relationship. The first is, I think we need to choose relationship over rightness. Relationship's the most important thing, right? What if God was like, hey, listen, I'm not going to accept you until you're right? Or until you just tell me I'm right at everything. Well, no, actually, what was most important to the Lord was relationship with us. He sacrificed a lot to have that relationship with us. And I think a lot of times we're unwilling to sacrifice rightness for relationship. And we get down the road so far that we realize, oh my goodness, I completely lost my relationship with my sister. Oh my goodness, I completely broke my friendship here because I was so stuck on being right. And so I think, as people, as leaders, we need to, again, ask ourselves what's most important. And I would say at the end of the day, that relationship is more important than you being right. And by the way, you might be wrong. you could be the one who's wrong. And that might be true. So I think that's the first place to start, is to choose relationship over rightness. Second thing I would say is, I think when it comes to navigating conflict, we need to choose our genre or our mode of communication wisely. I'm astonished, actually, if I could say that, astonished how people choose to communicate with one another. Difficult things. There are certain ways that you should talk about difficult things. I would say face to face. Now I know this is a different kind of world, right? So Zoom to Zoom, right? Whatever it might be. When you're addressing conflict, when you're talking about difficult things, text messaging is not the mode for that. Social media, let me say, social media is not the mode for that. You're making a mistake if you're thinking, I'm going to convince this person through this articulate argument. I mean, look at my keystrokes. It's unbelievable. That fire is coming off of the keys here. It's like they are going to be eternally transformed, right? Nonsense. How many people have you changed through your posts, right? No one, maybe, right? I don't know. Maybe you have more effect than I do. But the mode of communication is really important. I heard this one person came to me at one point, this is years back. He was a young adult, so now they're an older adult. And they came out together like, Brian, man, I'm going through a hard time. This girl I asked out said no. I was like, oh, I'm sorry about that. And I wanted to know more about it, right? I was like, what'd you do? How did you ask her? Well, I texted her. Like, you texted her? And then I found out that this was like a normal thing now, like they texted her. I said to her, dude, here's what you need to do. You need to go to her face and make her say no to your face, right? That's how we did it in the old days. Like, you make it hard for her to say no. Make her look you in the face and say, no, dude, not going out with you, right? You got a better chance. Just write this stuff down, Tim. Write this stuff down. But the methods that we choose sometimes, you're starting off bad already. If you say, listen, I'm gonna tell this person where they really offended me, through email. And sometimes a letter is the right method, but I think we need to stop and just pause and ask ourselves first, what's the best way to do this? I'm not saying what's the easiest way, right? Because oftentimes the easiest way leads down to the worst way. And the hardest way, actually.
Yeah, and if you're gonna use email, just use all caps.
Yes. Yeah, and the little emojis to make it not sound as bad. You're a terrible preacher, smiley face. That's not, that's great. Okay, next one is this. I think also in terms of the right mode in the way you communicate, whether it's through phone or Zoom or person, or those things, you need to consider those things. But also you need to choose the right time. I think like when we're hot, and this is what we're talking about conflict, it always feels like the time is now, right? Like, while I'm fiery. But I would say usually when you react in that moment, don't you say, I wish I would have waited until tomorrow, right? I wish I would have, thought more closely about this. I would say usually, even the Bible talks about, don't let anger go, overnight, right? And a lot of that doesn't necessarily mean go to the person, reveal your anger. It means actually go before the Lord and receive peace and counsel and wisdom before you speak with this person. And I think that's really important to choose the right time. So often people will come to me, right before I get up to speak and tell me, how I've hurt them or their troubles. I'm just like, I just don't think this is the right time for this, right? It's like right before you're to board the plane. I just needed to tell you, I'm not your father. Right? It's like, this is probably a bad time, right? And so choosing the right time, the right place is really important. Now listen, we laugh a little bit, but actually these little subtleties become major things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they become major things.
Hey, can I say something on that?
Yeah, you can, whatever you want.
Okay. Don't break up over text.
Yeah, that one too.
Okay, that's important. Also, don't get divorced over text. You can't do that. That's what you guys do. It's a little bit more involved. But when I was going through a divorce, and my wife at the time and I were trying to work through an agreement together, I had a therapist who was wonderful who said, listen, if she is no good in the evening, if she's not thinking well, or might be a little just kind of tired at night, don't pick that time at night. Be aware, read the room, as Greg says. Be aware of a time that's good for the person you're talking to about this. And she said, also think about how the other person communicates. My ex gets into deep, just crazy minded. She comes to me with like a three-dimensional spreadsheet, with all this detail, and I just don't have the attention span for that. And so my therapist was saying, okay, somehow to my wife, summarize it. Think about how the other person communicates and when they're best at communicating, the time of day, the time of week, not just in these instances, and just have a little compassion about that when you need to have these discussions, so particularly these relationships where we know people better.
Yeah.
We need to take that into account.
That's where the empathy comes in,
Yeah.
knowing the person, knowing when the best time, maybe it's not the best time for you, but it'd be the best time for them. That's really important. The next one I love to talk about, because I think it's so important, is that when we're navigating conflict, when we're working in this polarized world, I think we need to have positive assumptions for one another. We need to choose positive assumptions. This is where you should start. Far too often in my head, I'll just leave it in my world, I'll start thinking, oh, I can't believe that they did that to me. Oh man, they must hate me. I can't believe this, and all of a sudden you villainize somebody when they actually weren't out to hurt you. And so, but if you start with positive assumption, you say, hey, listen, this person was my friend. We shared a lot of time together. This person is a coworker of mine. We're on the same team. They would never want to, cut my legs out from underneath me. At least that's where I'm going to start, my positive assumption, and then let them prove you wrong if you're wrong. But I'll tell you this, for me, that positive assumption has saved me a lot of hours of my life of enjoyment, of not taking things home with me, of being able to enjoy the soccer game with my kids and not mull over all these things that end up not being true in the end. And so I think that's really helpful for us, is to actually go into conflict, go into hard conversations with some positive assumption. Which leads to my next one I would say is that I think in conflict we need to choose to focus on the good things too. A lot of times when we're hurt or something said that's offended us, all of a sudden everything becomes bad. Everything about that person, everything about what they've said, everything they've done has become bad, And it's just not true. It's just that maybe you've been hurt or maybe you've been offended. Or maybe you just need greater understanding of what's taking place. And so choose to think about those good things as you go in and mention those good things. And this could be a helpful thing as we're speaking to people. Hey, listen, first I just wanted to tell you that, and you really helped me out in this way. And I really appreciate this about you. And that's why it surprised me that when you said this, this is how I heard it. So now all of a sudden the person's going, oh, okay, this person's actually for me. They want this relationship. They're not attacking me. But something I said or did hurt them. And so now we can talk about it. And so starting from that place of focusing on something good is a good idea. The next thing I would say, I've got a lot of different things to say. I didn't tell you how many are on this list, but there's 8 of them.
I'm at the first page here, so.
It's only a one-pager, this whole talk. The other thing I would say is that what we need to learn to do in conflict and navigating this polarized world is choose our battles. This is really important. I think sometimes we spend a lot of time fighting things that just aren't that important. We need to choose our battles and think to ourselves, is this one really worth fighting? That thing that person said, is it really worth bringing it up or not? And think about what is the main thing, and is it compromising the main thing in our workplace, in our relationship? If it's not, it's okay to allow it to go sometimes. To allow offense to roll off. Not always. I'm not saying always, but sometimes we need to pick our battles. And it's good to think on something and say, is this the right battle for me to be in? And sometimes the answer, if you're honest, is no, I don't need to be a part of this battle. Sometimes it's not your battle to fight either. That's how I've seen people get into a lot of trouble in this space. The last thing I'd say is for those with a faith is to choose prayer. I can't tell you how often, navigating conflict, being and leading in a polarized world, how turning to prayer has been so helpful. You know, here at Walnut Hill, we lead a church that's diverse and growing in diversity. When I say diverse, I'm talking about age, I'm talking about gender, I'm talking about race, I'm talking about ethnicity, I'm talking about ability, I'm talking about gifting, so I'm talking about a wide range of things. But we want to be a diverse community, and we're growing in that. And that brings all sorts of different things in it. And you know, when things are said or not said, there's, you know, there can be tension. And so there have been a lot of different scenarios, even in the last, you know, 4, 5, 6 months. Do we wear masks? We shouldn't make me wear masks. I mean, this is a real thing. Why are you opening the church? Why are you allowing people to come into the church right now, Brian? You're risking their health. You know, why haven't you said something about this event? Why did you say something about this event? I mean, there's all kinds of things that are happening right now. And I can tell you right now, as a leader, and I've probably failed in this space, I'm sure I have in different ways, but without prayer, I would have failed every time. Every time. I'm certain of that. Because these things are too polarizing for you to do on your own. You can't do it on your own. So don't try. Don't try. You do it on your own, you're gonna fail. And you're gonna get hurt, and you're probably gonna hurt other people.
Yeah. And
so, you know, I don't know what your faith backgrounds are, but for me personally, prayer has been so instrumental, because I believe in a God that when we pray, He hears our prayers and He speaks to us. And so, you know, I got up after George Floyd was killed, and I was like, oh my goodness, Lord, what do I say? You know, just to be real honest, you know, as a white male, what do I say in this situation? As the leader of a church that's growing in diversity, what do I say in this situation? And if I would have picked my own words, they may have been okay, I don't know, or they could have been really wrong. But I went to the Lord and said, Lord, what do you want to say to your church? And tremendously helpful, tremendously helpful. Even into this election season, you know, we've stood up and said some different things. And as a leader, what's really helpful to me is that I'm able to go, I'm confident in what the Lord gave me to say. It may not have been what you wanted to hear. It may have stopped short of what you wanted me to say. But guess what? Like, I serve Jesus. and in prayer and with the collaboration of my friends and leadership, this is what we believe the Lord brought me to say. And there's a lot of strength in that, you know, and there's also a lot of peace in that. Talk about anxiety, there's a lot of peace in that position.
Right. If you the sermon series you did on Nehemiah on leadership was profoundly helpful to me. And if you go back and look at those on YouTube, I think you'll find some gems that are incredibly helpful from a leadership standpoint. One thing I've learned from you is this idea that leaders should pray. And just like you said, and I have become a lot more intentional about praying before everything, particularly conflict.
Yeah.
And it has been a great help. And I found, I'm learning now, God will always give me words.
Yeah.
And I went through this series, this stage when I was first starting off doing this, but I would doubt those words.
Yeah.
You know, and Greg Horns helped me a lot in saying, look, you are hearing from God, you're doubting, and you need to learn to work through that, you know, and if something seems like it's inconsistent with the Bible, that's something very different, of course. Yeah. But if I am doubting or not sure, I'll ask you, or I'll ask Craig, or I'll you know, John Pasquale. Yeah. I mean, we got mentors we can go to.
Yeah.
Look, one other thing I want to say about prayer is, last July, I was getting ready to fly to Denver to keynote at a conference. And I get a call from my kid's mom. They're over there with her, and she said, hey, I'm not going to take them tomorrow.
Right.
Which means, okay, I either find a nanny, you know, at 10 o'clock at night, or I cancel my trip. And
or you just leave them at home.
oh, they'll be fine, you know. Give the keys to my 13-year-old. Yeah, he'll be fine. And I tell you what, I felt so powerless and so hopeless. And I remember calling up the Delta to cancel. And the woman says, I said, I have to cancel this. And the rep says, well, why do you have to cancel? And I just broke down because I felt so powerless. And I said, look, this is what's happened. And you know, she gave me a break. I said, don't worry about it. You know, you get full credit. You don't have to pay for it. So try that. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's helpful. That might be the thing they're going
That's the
down.
winner. That's right. Brian, I just felt so hopeless in that moment. And I said, you know what? I'm going to put all this down and I'm going to go for a walk and pray about this. I went out, went for a walk, prayed about it. When I came back, I thought, you know what? Carlos Hidalgo lives in, a good friend of mine who's also a keynote speaker, lives in Colorado Springs. You know, he's an hour and a half away from Denver, and he's in there quite a bit. I called him, I picked up the phone and called him. I said, listen, any chance you can do a keynote for me tomorrow afternoon in Denver? He said, oh, I'm actually gonna be there in the morning. That's no problem. So then I called Kathy, the woman who runs the event, and I said, hey, because I wanted to call her back with a solution instead of a problem. I said, listen, I can't make it. This is what's happening, and I'm so sorry. But Carlos Hidalgo is willing to do this, and I'm going to spend time with him. I've gone through the speech. I've told him what he can use and that kind of thing. And she said, oh my gosh, we love Carlos. That would be great. And it just worked out so well. And it was such a good lesson to me that when I get in that hopeless spot, I just need to stop and pray and just step away from it for a bit.
Yeah.
You know, and like you said, just don't respond right away. Just take that break. And ask God to help and lead you to, you know, whatever he wants to show you.
Yeah. I think, and this might lead into some other things we can talk about quick, and then we want to open up to questions. Because I think this leads into some self-care kind of things.
Yes.
Because, you know, I don't know about you, but maybe you've had seasons in life where you've just been on edge and you're not in a good posture, actually, and you're, you know, we can enter the world ready for a fight, right? Or actually, we can enter the world starting fights. And if we want to lead in a polarized world, we actually have to put the right uniform on. In one sense, we got to be equipped and in the best posture to do that. So I think there's a few things here we can share quickly, and then we'll open up for question and answer on just, you know, what's it look like for us to be ready to face our polarized world. And let me just share a couple things. This is kind of how to be prepared, ready to face our polarized world in kind of a healthy and constructive way. If you're not healthy yourself, then you're not gonna, you know, navigate the situation well. So the first thing I would say is this, and it comes with a challenge, I think. I think we need to monitor our intake, our news intake right now. I think that's actually a really good thing, in our social media intake. And listen, I'm not trying to take your phones away or do any of this kind of stuff, but I do think that, you know, are you playing the clip?
I am playing the clip. We're going to go to the clip now. No, I was going to see if I could find the comments, the questions.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
I think this would go a long way for us to be in a position, in a posture where we can actually deal with conflict well. I think our media, our social media, our news channels, you know, they're polarizing us. They're not bringing us together, right? So I would challenge you to ask yourselves, you know, how often am I on social media? Is it a healthy amount? How am I receiving my news? Is it in a healthy way? Why am I going to receive this kind of news? And really determine how you're going to be a consumer. Don't be consumed by it. The second thing I would say is this, is it's really helpful in conflict to learn as much as you can about yourself. You need to know what triggers you. You need to know who you are and why you're affected by the things other people do and say. And you're going to pick up on some patterns. And then as you grow in that, you're going to mature in that, and you're going to see these things coming before they completely derail you. And so you might learn quickly that, wow, whenever this subject comes up, man, it gets me upset, right? So you can see it now coming down the track, and you can choose to either confront it or tell the person, hey, listen, this let's talk about something else. And you can, learning about yourself is really important. Learning how you deal well with conflict is really important. I'd encourage you to, take different tests like Strength Finders, Enneagram. These kind of things are really good to kind of process, who you are, how God has put you together, and that's going to be a helpful thing. I would say paying attention to your physical health is really good too. I think paying attention to your spiritual health is really, really good. I often say, I think I've said this to you too, Tim, is that, I encourage people to early in the morning focus on your spiritual well-being. For me, that's turning to prayer, opening the Bible. Usually, if I meet with Jesus, my Savior, early in the morning, it's for filling. But if I don't do that, later in the day, I'm going to Jesus for recovery, right? And so early in the morning, I'm saying, Lord, fill me. I'm so excited about this day. Give me the gifts that you want to give me. Man, I can't wait to enter your world and impact it. If I don't do that in the morning and I'm coming to the Lord later in the afternoon, usually it's, Lord, help me out. Bail me out of this situation. Oh my goodness, right? And so focusing on your physical and spiritual health is really good.
I've learned, you did tell me that one. You also told me to focus on my physical health. You told me that one as well.
Yes,
Maybe
I did.
that's curious about that. But I've become more and more aware of the temptations I have in the morning before I go down and do my first 20. Go downstairs.
Yeah.
It's, let me just check. I just want to check with the news. I'm at just 2 minutes, and then always goes off the rail.
Yeah.
And one
Then
thing
it's the second 20, really.
yeah, then it becomes so but being aware of those temptations, like you said, the triggers have helped me a great deal to say, okay, wait a minute, that's temptation. Let me stay focused and start off with the word.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple more. Then, if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. We might not be able to answer, but I'd love to hear them. Having good counsel in your life is absolutely critical. I've always, well, not always, I guess from high school until now, and I'm 41 if you were wondering, I've always had a mentor in my life, always. And that person or people, I have a few in my life right now. Those people are people that I can go to and say, hey, listen, this happened. Am I off my rocker here? Help me deal with this. And sometimes a good mentor who you can trust in and let in will say, hey, listen, you're overreacting to this, all right? It's not a big deal. Or they'll say, listen, here's how you can navigate this. And that outside perspective is so helpful. Usually it should be somebody who's a little bit further along in life than you. Don't choose your younger brother or something like that. Like somebody who can actually give you some counsel and wisdom. It also needs to be somebody who's willing to tell you when you're wrong. So don't just pick somebody who thinks you're a hero, right? Pick somebody who's willing to tell you, who wants what's best for you. Doesn't think you're the best, but wants the best for you. And that can be a really helpful thing in navigating conflict and living in this polarized world. The other one I would say is, and this is really important, and this is where I'll stop. I think it's really important right now to befriend people who aren't like you. I think it's really important. I can tell you, I think up until about 4 years ago, most of my friends looked exactly like me. And did the similar thing that I do. And that's really easy to happen. Of course that happens, right? Because of the families we grow up in, the work that we do, those kind of things. It can be easy, the places that we live. It's comfortable. But I would say for us to really understand people, to really appreciate what God has created, right now it would be really wise to look around and even ask the Lord, because you might say, I don't have any other people like that who are different than me. To say, Lord, I'd love to meet folks who aren't like me, who have different experiences than me, who are older than me, who are different, a different race than I am, people who are different in their giftings. Lord, I would just love that. And I would imagine that the Lord would answer that prayer, one. And two, as he does that, your eyes will be opened to the way that other people have lived and live. And it might even crumble some of these areas of conflict for you, because you'll have a deeper level of understanding for people. And so you can do that in lots of different ways, but I think that would be something to pray about and something to really pursue. Yeah.
Okay, we're at 7:48 now. You want to open up for anybody have a question, or is anybody? I couldn't get to the YouTube page online. Okay.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, we can. We'll wait.
I'll start with one from here that I've gotten. It's is when you look at leading in a polarized world, what if you're not the one in the conflict? What if you're leading people who are in conflict? How do you do that well? So if you have people who are polarized in their opinions, who work for you or who
Yeah. So that is maybe what you call like peacemaking or conflict resolution, mediating, that kind of idea. Generally, what I like to try to do is find the common ground first. A lot of times people in conflict want to go right at the conflict. And really what they're doing is they're creating a very small world, you know? And so I think part of peacemaking is bringing the broader picture out. And so if these are people that have been traveling together for a while, there's a friendship there, or they're co-workers, it might be just, again, kind of bringing them to the broader level. Remember what this is our vision. Remember, this is what we're working towards. Do you remember this is why you're on the team? This is why you're on the team. And try to bring some common ground into the experience. And from there, then talk about, you know, that point of tension. I would say too, the other thing I would say is peacemaking doesn't happen overnight usually. And so set the expectation that this is going to be a bit of a journey. You know, if you want real reconciliation, real restoration, it's going to take time. And that's okay. So you don't have to solve it in one meeting or one post, right? Just to call back. But that's just a couple of things I would say to that.
Is there another question out there? Hey, you talk about getting to know yourself, and one thing I recommend is this book, the 5 Love Languages. Anybody heard of that before? Man, that was so helpful. I wish I would have read that when I was in my 20s. It helps you understand, you know, there are 5 different ways that people understand love or feel love. And
Receive love, right?
Receive love, yeah, thank you. But also in there, as you will understand what your triggers are.
Yeah.
Because it helps you understand what will set you off in a relationship. Yeah. And it's just, I think it's powerful for, you know, if you're not in a relationship now, or you know, obviously if you are now, but at some point you will be. Yeah. It's very helpful.
Yeah. And so I think it's a really fun, I'll come right here in a second. I think it's really fun too to, in teams, do some of these tests together and talk about it, because knowing how somebody else is knit together is really helpful. To go, oh, that's why every time I just come to them, you know, and tell them the deadline's tomorrow, they will freak out, you know. Whereas somebody else, they love that. They love the challenge. Where was the question? Yeah.
When you're leading people who are disagreeing on matters that, for example, in ministry, when you're leading people who don't really agree on biblical standards, how to bring them to a common ground and see that rather than be opinionated, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, so can I repeat that, make sure I get that right for the folks tuned in here. So when you're talking about specifically in ministry, when you're leading people who don't have, you said a biblical
common ground.
A biblical
or standard.
Standard, that's what you said, yeah. When you're leading people who don't have a biblical common ground or a standard, how do you try to bring them all together?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So there are a lot of issues or topics that create division within the Christian faith, right? Let me mention some just to get our blood boiling a little bit. You can talk about women in leadership, right? You can talk about the gifts of the Spirit. Are they for today or are they for back then, right? These are some of the things that when you look at different denominations, they have different opinions on them, right? And so in one sense, what the church has done is said, okay, well, we disagree. Well, we'll just start our own denomination, right? Well, Walnut Hill is a non-denominational church. So basically what we're saying is we're Catholics, we're Protestants, we're Presbyterians, we're Baptists. So how do you live together, right? Some people would say infant baptism, other people would say, you know, adult baptisms, right? Here's what I would say about that as a leader. I'm really glad that I don't build my faith like a house of cards. And I think too many people do. And that could be a really bad thing for many reasons, let me tell you. One is, if I build my faith like a house of cards, then when one of the cards goes out, the whole thing falls, right? Now, when you take that in disagreement, I could say, oh my goodness, my church, believes that that you have to speak in tongues to say that you're saved. And I don't believe that. Boom, whole thing falls down, right? Now, I probably should have just thrown that out there without, saying all the hell believes. But anyway, that's a whole other issue. But you understand, right? Or what can happen is all of a sudden I've got the strong faith in the Lord, and then my family or somebody I love is going through deep suffering, and that doesn't line up. Boom, a card comes out, the whole thing falls down. And that, as a pastor, I've seen so many times, right? My faith just can't stand that. I like to think of my faith more like rings in a tree. When you cut a tree and then you see the tree rings, right? And there are things that are in the center ring, right? And when you look at those things in the center ring, if you were to remove those, it wouldn't be the Christian faith anymore. And these things I'm going to die for, okay? That God created this world, that he created everybody as image bearers, that, that humanity fell, but out of God's great love, he sent a Savior for us. That when we give our life to the Savior Jesus, our sins are forgiven. In fact, he remembers them no more, and that we have eternity with him, right? Like that's my center, right? And actually, to me, it's no longer church if we don't agree on those center things. Now we begin to go out on these rings, and we might place different topics in different rings. But when you disagree with me on women in leadership, I'm not saying we do, right? We've not had a conversation. But you understand, I'm just using examples. It's a very dangerous conversation, right? But when you disagree, as long as we're saying, it's falling somewhere in these rings, right? But it's not that centered gospel message here. We can live together. I think we can live together. It might be difficult. We might really disagree on it, but we ought to be able to have the same mission, the same purpose, and the same pursuit together. So now, not everybody looks at it that way. And so sometimes in ministry even, you have to say, what I really want for you is to find a place where you can grow in the Lord. That's actually my chief desire. And whether it falls under the brand of Walnut Hill or Calvary or First Presbyterian Baptist Church of the Nazarene, I'm not too bothered by that. I want you to grow in the Lord. And if this issue is coming so much in the way of you doing that here, then you should go somewhere else and do that. Now that's like last resort, but does that answer your question at all? Yeah.
Okay, Kyler,
Now he's going to ask all the questions about what
question?
about tongues?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question whether either through scripture or just through your own personal experience, what's an effective way to add more empathy into your faith or just into your daily life and kind of understanding others?
Yeah, that's great. I honestly, I think it goes back to just one of the last points I made. This is how I've personally experienced it, is that for me to really grow in empathy for somebody else, I have to get to know them, and maybe that's just because I'm not a naturally empathetic person or something, but once I serve with somebody, or once I hear their story, once I go to their home, once I walk with them through a difficult journey, this is when I really get to know somebody, and when walls and barriers come down, and preconceived ideas come down too. And so I actually think part of my dissertation, a whole chapter was written on relationships change the heart. Ideas don't really change the heart. They might. Programs don't change the heart. Relationships do. And so that's why God chose to change us through relationship, right? Not information. Here, I'm just going to give you this Bible and good luck. Right? No, I'm going to give you this Bible, which is going to direct you towards what? A relationship with me. And so I think the Lord's just modeled for us perfectly how to grow in our love for one another. So I would say, that's what I would say, you know, we need to be fervent about being around people who aren't just like us, to have a bigger understanding of who we are as humanity. Did that answer? Okay. Yeah. Any others? We're close to out of time, but yeah.
How do you deal with a possible polarized work environment with everything going on in
Yeah,
this?
let me repeat that
year?
for so the questions are for YouTube, excuse me. And Snapchat, we're also live on Snapchat right now.
8-second clips every time, 5-second clips every time.
Yeah. How do you, wait, so now you gotta say it again.
How do you deal with a polarized work environment or workplace?
Thank you. How do you deal with a polarized work environment or workplace? Is the question.
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful for a pretty healthy work environment here. At least I'd like to think so because I'm one of the leaders. You guys can tell me, some of the staff later, if it's a really bad one. Okay, time, guys, but yes. Here's what I would say. I do think clarity is important, like we talked about before, because I think humans are prone to go in their own way. You even look at the Israelites, and it's like, and they went their own way, right? And nothing good came of that. And so I think clarity in this moment, this is really an uncertain world right now, isn't it? I would imagine that many of you were uncertain whether you're going to keep your jobs in this season, right? What is this going to look like? And so then, and that maybe came in the whole point of like working harder, right? Working longer hours, just to almost even prove your value in the company, right? Am I hitting that home at all? And so I think right now, I don't think you can survive that way, right? And maybe even people are buying for, look how valuable I am right now, because everybody's uncertain, right? And so I think it's really important right now just to speak those things out, just be real honest and say, hey, listen, man, what do you want me to accomplish this year? Like, and if you can, I don't know how healthy or unhealthy the environment is that you're working in, but can we all get together and really like, almost like promote each other's priorities this year? I did a really good exercise several years ago where, you know, our top leadership team kind of came together and we brought our priorities. Like, hey, listen, bring your top 5 priorities. And we wrote them up on a whiteboard, right? And then what we did was we said, everybody in the room has 3 votes that you can put on every person. So let's say Tim's are up there, his top 5 priorities. And I've got 3 votes, and I can place those votes on any one of the 5. And we all did that for each other. And it was really interesting because at the end of it, some people were going, wow, I thought this was my top priority, but all of you are saying this is my top priority. Help me understand that, right? And we walked out of the room kind of with a realignment of what our priorities are. And also a team going out and saying, championing everybody else to achieve those things. And that brought some health through that clarity. I think, you know, the other thing you kind of have to ask is, you know, what are the tension points that are causing, you know, polarization? Sometimes one person can do that. A lot of times 1 or 2 people can do that. And so then I would say, you know, focus on the issue, right? And whether it's a relationship with that person or bring it to the attention of your, you know, manager, saying, hey, listen, and this person is negative all the time. What can we do to change that part of the environment? But anyway, I need to know more specifically to speak in your specific context, but maybe that helps a little bit. Yeah, Brian.
So my question is kind of scenario based. So where I work right now, people know that I'm a follower of Christ. And for some reason, they like to ask me questions that are very polarizing. And I get put in this awkward spot where I feel like I'm answering the whole church. And I don't like that spot. And so I try to deflect the question and, you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, so if you have any advice on how I or we can
Yeah.
handle that.
Here, I'll give you a suggestion because I have a scenario like that. So I play hockey, men's league hockey, which is just adult gym class. That's what basically it is. It's actually a bunch of men trying not to injure themselves for 30 or for 90 minutes. I desperately tried to go into this league without anybody knowing that I was a pastor. Okay, like I just wanted to be a hockey player, just a guy in the room. Okay, well, quickly somehow they found out. You know, and so now they call me Padre. So my nickname, the whole hockey league calls me Padre. They don't even know what my real name is. But that led to them, you know, in the locker room, all kinds of stuff, like throwing out these, you know, different things, right? And so it was kind of annoying me, but at the same time, I was like, hey, this is a great opportunity, right? And I did pray. I said, hey, Lord, you know, let me score a bunch of goals, because that will help my witness. And so what I decided to do, which was helpful, is eventually I said, hey guys, listen, I'd love to talk about any of this, but let's do it at this time, you know. And for us, after the games, we'll go, you know, grab a drink together, okay? I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but if it does, we have all these principles that we can apply tonight. And I just said, hey, listen, guys, love to talk about this stuff. Let's do it there. So then at least I kind of have controlled the situation a little bit. And if they do ever bring it up again, I just say, hey, man, hey, we'll talk afterwards, you know, and it just kind of comes back to that. So I put something practical in place, you know, and even joke with them back. Hey, I told you we talked about this over here, you know. Yeah, that's good. Something like that. Are there any others? We can wrap up. We're just over 8 o'clock, but if there was any last one anybody wanted to ask, Tim would be happy to.
Yes, yeah, as long, I'll answer any questions as long as it's multiple choice. And you bring a Scantron. Anything was gonna worry?
Oh, Maury. What was I gonna say, Maury? I did.
Well, the crooked tooth. So we're just.
Yeah. Here, I'll close with this.
Yeah.
Okay. I think right now in our uncertain world, anxiety can creep into our lives really, really easily. And I just want you guys to know there are things that you can be certain of right now, right? You have a God who loves you. You have a God who is in control. He's in charge. And really, our worry leads us nowhere good. I often tell the story of, you know, at one point, I looked at one of my daughters. I have 4 daughters. A lot of reasons for anxiety. I have 4 daughters. And one of them had a crooked tooth when they were young. And what anxiety would do and what worry would do is it would sound like this. Oh my goodness, Reese has a crooked tooth. Man, she is that. You know, the problem is like, I don't have the money to do braces right now this season. And so she's gonna have this crooked tooth, but I can't afford the braces. And if I can't afford the braces, well then she's gonna have this crooked tooth her whole life. And what if there are other crooked teeth? And you know, then she goes to the job interview and she's in front of the person that she, you know, is speaking and they have this thing against crooked teeth, and then she can't get a job, right? Now all of a sudden she's without a job, you know, still living at home, and she has got all this time on her hands. And now that she has all this time on her hands, like how is she gonna fill that time? Well, maybe she's gonna go and meet other people who, you know, have a lot of time on their hands, and maybe these aren't the best people for her to be around. And now all of a sudden she's introduced to alcohol and drugs. And now she's gotten to this, she has an addiction. And oftentimes, I know my father-in-law works with men coming out of addiction, and a lot of times addiction can lead to doing bad things. And, you know, now she's gonna do something bad, and maybe even something that gets her in prison. And now what am I gonna do? I'm gonna have to go and visit my daughter in prison, right? But where did this all start? She had a crooked tooth, right? And so all of a sudden now my daughter's 3 years old with a crooked tooth, and I put her in prison, right? But you see, like, this is actually, it's a funny thing, but actually this is what worry does to us, because we do this. We play all these like what if scenarios. Well, what if I lose my job? What if things things don't come through? What if the next paving job isn't there? What if nobody wants another home right now? Although a lot of people want homes right now, and I'm picking the wrong things. And everybody's paving everything right now, if you haven't noticed. Yeah, you know, what if, you know, the school systems change? What if they shut down after this? What if then this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen? And a lot of times we live in this world that's actually not happening. It's all this what if, and we've worried ourselves to death. And so I think right now, just in the last kind of concluding word, it would be, let's focus on the things that we're certain of. You know, let's focus on our faith. Let's focus on our friendships. Let's focus on what we can do and contribute to being peacemakers in this world, being empathetic people. But let's focus on the certain things, and let's not get too wrapped up in things that might never be. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening to us. And we'll let you know when we do another one of these, and it'll be different people, so that'll be great. And
He's telling me I got fired. This is what I'm saying.
no, you're already.
No, I'm just worried about that.
All right. Thanks everybody. Thank you, YouTube people. Mom, Dad. Good night.